Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Petra Fuzek, the Marketing Coordinator of Trans-Europe. Before we get started, let me introduce our company in a few sentences. There are only a few IT companies in the domestic software market that would carry out such comprehensive activities as Trans-Europe, which offers modern solutions for companies, whether it's automation, creative and marketing work, purchasing creative tools, and its graphic background. We provide nationwide coverage, have an extensive reseller network, and our end users include the largest advertising agencies, printers, web design studios, banks, universities, and public administrations, as well as multinational companies. We can proudly say that 722 vendors and more than 6,000 customers have trusted us for 30 years now. JetBrains is one of the best-known players in the market of software products for developers. Their strengths are their wide products range and the fact that they invest a lot of energy innovating their products. For us, as their distributor in Hungary, this is a huge advantage. Their qualified team of professionals and well-deserved reputation guarantee excellent quality and long-term product support, which is why we can rely on them and work together smoothly. During the webinar, I would like to kindly ask everyone to mute their microphones and switch their camera off. The recorded version of this webinar will be sent out to the participants. At the end of the webinar, you will have the opportunity to ask your questions during a Q&A. Last but not least, I would like to mention that we have prepared a surprise for you today. A valuable JetBrains license will be given away among the questioners tomorrow in a live broadcast on our Instagram. So just collect your questions for the Q&A at the end of the webinar. Those with more complex technical or trade questions, please contact us by email. And now let's welcome Maarten, one of the great developers of JetBrains. Enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Petra, for the introduction. And good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar here. Let me start with sharing my screen. And while I do that, I'll quickly introduce myself. I'm Maarten, developer advocate at JetBrains, which means I do demos and webinars like this, answer questions, work with customers and everything. So that's pretty much it. With that, let's get started, because Space is a massive product and there's lots of things to show. Like Petra mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We will see if we can handle them during the presentation. After the presentation, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat anyway, so we'll see where we get there. So let's start with what is Space. And I know there's lots of bullet points on this slide and so on. But generally, if you think of Space, you could think it's a complete solution for software development teams and software development companies. So this means that all of the technical things are there, like Git hosting, code reviews, planning, issue tracking, and all of those things. But also things like group and private chats to communicate with development teams, between project managers, between people in the design team, and so on. There is also the concept of having teams and projects, so you can essentially recreate your entire organizational structure in Space and make use of all of that information in Space as well. There's a built-in calendar, there's absence and vacation management, things like that, and also a very rich API if Space is not yet enough for you and you want to extend it with your own logic and so on. Now, why am I giving you this entire list of bullets? Because all of those things are modules that you typically see as separate things in your company. So many of you may be using GitHub or Azure DevOps or GitLab or something for Git hosting, but then using Jira, for example, for issue tracking, and then TeamCity or Jenkins for CI/CD, and then maybe Slack or Teams for group and private chats, and maybe Office 365 for team management and calendars and all of that. Space does integrate with a number of these. But the general idea is that Space is a replacement to bundle all of these things together in essentially one product. And having everything together also means that there is a possibility of integrating things together. So for example, if you are a software developer and you want to ask a colleague whether they can review your code that you're writing, Well, having the vacation management in Space means that they can immediately see which colleague is on vacation, for example, and which colleague they should refer to next for that review. So Think Space is really integrating all of those things together in one box, in one product. Space is really for any type of team that is doing software development, whether that's hardcore software development, writing pure code, whether that is a digital agency building websites and doing all of the marketing activities around that. Essentially anything that requires a project team to work together on things with issue tracking that could be using source control and things like that is ideally suited for using Space. If you have a self-organizing company where teams kind of form depending on what the project is going to be and all that, Space also is really ideal for you because everything by default is self-manageable for everyone in your company, so everyone can create a team, everyone can create a project and all of that. If that's something that you want to avoid, of course, you can also lock down permissions, but typically if you have something where you want your employees to self-organize whatever they are building for customers, you can do that with Space. And of course, many other use cases, but this was essentially the ones that came top of mind when I was thinking about who is Space for. With that, I think I'm almost through my slides. I have a question and answers slide at the end, but as I mentioned, ask your questions in the chat, and with that, I'll be switching into a demo instead. So during the demo, I will be myself. I'm Maarten with a different profile picture there in the light theme, light browser, and so on. And I also have a colleague in a dark browser, a dark theme, and so on. So if you see me switch between two, that is to demonstrate the collaboration options that are available in Space. But let's start with my profile here. So if you set up Space and you join a Space organization, the first thing you will see when logging in the morning is this personal dashboard with everything that you can access. On the left in the navigation, you see that you can access your profile and configure your profile. There's a calendar, there's documents, there's checklists, code reviews that you may want to look at, and general configuration of your entire workspace so that you can configure it to what you need. But more importantly, the dashboard on the right-hand side, the big one, has everything that is relevant to you today when you are looking at this Galactic Travels Inc. Company, and you're logging in and you want to see what you want to be working on in the morning. So what you'll see is your calendar, what's up today. So apparently I have a daily stand-up at 3 p.m. You can also see the teams and members you follow. This is essentially to get quick access to certain profiles or to certain teams, to chat with them, to see what they're up to and all that. You will see your favorite projects. Typically the projects that you work on a day-to-day basis, you can configure those as well. So if you have 3 projects throughout the year and next year have 3 different projects, you can configure, of course, what you want to show there on the main screen. I'm a software developer, so I can see the code reviews that I have to work on, and I can also see recent blog posts, essentially the information in the company that is shared with me or with people in the same groups that I am in. And groups can be teams and can be locations. So if you have multiple locations in your company, those blog posts can actually be targeted to locations as well, which means if you have a fire drill, for example, in one of your offices, you can announce that as a blog post and only people in that office will get that announcement, and others will not be disturbed by whatever is coming in. Right, before we dive into the project management and all that, let's quickly look at the teams that I have here. It says followed members and teams. By default, your own team, the team that you belong to, is shown here. So I'm in the software development team and I can see who is in there. And I can also easily see who is available, who is not available. So I can see, for example, that one of my colleagues is on sick leave today. So I should not be reaching out to him because he's on sick leave. My own team is there by default, but you can also follow other people in the company by essentially going to their profile and then clicking the follow button there, and they will show up on your dashboards. Now, why is that important? Because very often you are working together with people from different teams and you need quick access to them in some way. Well, following those people means they will show up in your dashboard here, and you can easily navigate to their profile if you want and start chatting with them in Space, or just see who of them are available or unavailable as well. So all of that is there. This team directory, like I mentioned in the slides, is really the representation of your entire company. It's not security groups or anything. It's really the way you structure your organization represented in Space. So what you'll see is I can go to the software development team. You will see who is in there as the development team members. You get a group calendar, who's available where, who's not available where. You can quickly schedule something for the entire team if you want, and you see that the entire team can join this meeting. And also you can look at absences, holidays, and things like that for the entire team. So imagine you want to organize something for the entire team. Well, you can look here and see, okay, not today because someone is on sick leave, not the 11th, apparently because there's a regional holiday somewhere, but maybe the 7th here could work to organize something. The team directory here is not only my team, but also all of the teams. So what I can do is, for example, clear this filter and look at the entire company. And now I get the same view for the entire company. I see everyone who is in the organization. Also what happens. I can see a feed of what happened, who joined, who left, who changed roles, etc. But also the team calendar for the entire company. So everyone who has some absence somewhere is shown on this calendar. So again, I can see for the entire company even where I can schedule something that is relevant. Now the scheduling is maybe not what you will be doing on a day-to-day basis, but if you have a larger organization, it does make sense to have this team directory and to be able to figure out, for example, who is in the marketing team. I can switch to that, see who is in there. And if you have multiple offices, you can also, for example, filter on just the Copenhagen office, and I know that I can now talk with this person about any marketing issues that I may have. Similar to filtering on locations, I can also filter on position. So manager or product marketing manager, I can filter on that as well in the team directory. Now, the team directory obviously is not the most important thing in Space, but it does supplement everything else that you have in Space, and it does support everything else you have in Space. So that's why I wanted to start with that one before diving into the project management and everything around that. Meanwhile, again, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat and we'll see where we get there. Right. With that, let's dive into one of the projects that I have here. This project, Ktor.io, is one project, can be a permanent project that lives on forever and ever, but if you have customers and every customer has a project going on for just a few months, you can obviously create them and close them afterwards when everything is done. Every project has a description so that people in the company will know what this is about. And every project will have members. And members can be random people from the company, but also teams. So in this case, the software development team is in this project, but also some people from other teams that we are working with together that want to keep track of what is going on in the project, look at issues, look at progress, and all of that. On the dashboard of this project, I will also see code reviews, things that I have to look at. I can look at issues. So for example, I have 11 issues that I should be working on. There's checklists, documents, repositories, and all that. So I suggest we go through all of the things in a project one by one. And let's start with the more generic ones that apply to pretty much any role in the organization, and then dive into some of the software development specific ones. So first of all, a project can have documents linked to every project. And documents is really like a wiki, like a knowledge base where you can store any type of documents, for example, documentation about how to work with the Kubernetes clusters in this project, but also things like meeting reports, etc. These documents are ordered in folders and they are all editable, and anyone that has permissions can edit them, of course. You have rich text. If you prefer writing in Markdown, you can switch to that as well. You can make things bold, italic, add links, uploads, attachments, and all of that. So it's really documenting what is going on in the project, maybe some meeting notes, maybe some how to get started with the project, etc. Documents can be files like this, where you see, for example, if we have Kubernetes documentation and all of that, documents can also be checklists. Checklists are not just plain text, not just like a Word document, for example, but they are really a list of items. And what you put in that list of items is really completely up to you. What I typically use them for is to make brain dumps during a meeting, for example, quickly write down some notes and quickly write down some action points on what should happen. Checklists can also be something for project planning, for example. So this checklist at OpenTelemetry supports is one that has information about building an entire feature, all of the different tasks that are involved, and just writing them down in a checklist. So what you can do here is just enter and say demo for Trans Europe, go through projects, go through other things. So I can quickly write those down, but I can also use shortcuts and so on, or the toolbar here to move them up, to restructure things, to maybe make this on top level, just quickly noting down whatever you want to work on. Now the interesting thing is, I mentioned Space is really combining everything together in one box. From these checklists, you can also create issues, and you'll see that actually a number of the items in this checklist have already been converted into issues. So what you will see is that when you convert them to an issue, you get the state, the status of the issue, and you get who is working on it. And from here, I can, for example, look at this adding open tracing support and look at more details on who is working on it, when's the due date, is it on a planning board, for example, what's the discussion about it, are there any comments, any questions, things like that. This is one issue, and I think this is a nice bridge to look at all of the other issue tracking features that are in Space. So we saw documents, we saw checklists, we will now look at issues. So issues are really that, they are issue tracking, they are your Jira, they are your U-Track, anything but integrated in Space, and actually just Space. Issues can be listed, of course, like you see here. You can filter them by any fields that are available. You can, for example, look at things that are in progress. Maybe you want to see whatever is going to happen still this year. You can filter that and really drill down into whatever is available there. You can create new issues if you want and assign them to someone. And again, look at issue details as well. This one, for example, the due date has expired, so it looks like this is not going to happen soon, so let's maybe move that out to somewhere in October. The issues, like I mentioned before, have a title, a description, they can have attachments, you can have your code links to an issue and so on. And you can add custom fields if you want. So by default, we have a status, we have someone who is assigned due date and tags, but if you want, you can also add custom fields, for example, to say, look, I want to store the customer ID, for example, with one of those issues. You can do that, store them as text and make them required, and add custom fields to issues as well. But let's not go into extensibility yet. Let's continue looking at issues. The thing that I want to show here in terms of issues is that this is really where the integrated nature of Space starts to shine. First of all, an issue has comments and messages, and I can ask my colleague, for example, and say, Heather, is this something you want to look at? Send that off as a comment on the issue, and everyone looking at this issue will be able to see the messages that are in the issue. But on Heather's side, my colleague, and again switching browser, so this is the different colleague, she will get a chat notification and see that I asked something there, and she can say, sure, will do. Will you reassign to me, please? She can send that from the chat, and again on my side, I will see that again in the issue. So again, chat and issues are integrated. They all come together. Now, why is this important? Because I may be working on this issue right now, but Heather may be doing something completely different, and she doesn't have to go into the project, into the issue list, find the issue and all that. No, she can just respond to a chat message. So you kind of win time and you don't have to make a full context switch to looking at this project. For me personally, there's also a couple of things that you can do. You can subscribe to issues and get notifications about people adding messages. You can configure whether you want to get push notifications if you use the Space mobile application, for example. Get email notifications, essentially get information whenever someone updates the issue there. I can also personally add this issue to my to-do list. Imagine there's some work I have to do on this, coordinate or figure out a new deadline or something like that. I can click this lightning bolt and add it to my personal to-do list, and you will now see that anywhere in Space I have this list of to-do items where you can add custom things like this demo, for example, which I'm completing, so that can be removed, but also issues, chat messages, anything that you want to follow up later, you can essentially add to the to-do list here or remove it again so that you can follow it up. I'll cover the to-do list at a later point in time as well, but just to give you an idea, this all integrates again with all of the other modules that are available in Space. Right, issues. I know a lot of people don't like working with lists of issues like we have them here. They like to have boards and do kind of like a planning meeting, stand-up or something like that. So that's the next thing here. There's issue boards where you can create multiple boards if you want. You can add sprints if you want as well. And in a sprint, you will see that you have a backlog of issues that you can add or remove. Let's add this one, remove this one, some of those things. And when you have them on the board, you can of course drag them to in progress or move this one to open again, switch it around a little bit during a stand-up, during a planning meeting on what is going on with issues. So this is the visual overview of what is our current workload, whereas in the issues you will still be able to filter, slice and dice and get all of the details about a certain issue. Right. So I think most of these things can be used by any role in the company, by marketing, by sales, by accounting, by administration, to document whatever they have, to work on checklists of things that should happen, to have issues, to do sprint planning and all of that. So let's now next look at the things that are really focused at software development teams. And again, any questions, drop them in the chat. Right, so for software development teams, you have issues, of course, you have documents, all of that can be used by software development teams, but typically you want to be writing code at some point, and that is also something that is in Space. Space supports having source code repositories. They're all Git-based. You can create a new repository if you want and start working with codes. Now, I'm clicking this new repository button because there's something that I want to show you in case you want to try Space. You can of course create a new repository in Space directly and give it a name. But if you have an existing GitLab, GitHub, Azure DevOps and you want to migrate it to Space, you can also migrate, enter the remote repository URL and essentially pull everything into Space so you have a copy of the entire repository that is out there. Also, if you just want to test things, try out things, but not yet migrate completely, you can also set up mirroring with GitHub or with an external Git hosting service. And what that will do is essentially set up a repository that people can use in Space, but also in the original repository, and Space will essentially make sure that both sites are completely in sync so that you don't have to move everything over at once. In this project, I have two repositories. I have Ktor and Ktor samples. Let's maybe look at Ktor here and see what is going on there. In a repository, you will see the list of all of the commits that have happened. For every commit, you can look at details. Is there anything that is more interesting? Maybe this one. In those details, you will see, of course, the name of the commit or the commit message, the commit description, but also all of the files that have been added, modified, deleted, and so on. So you can click there, look at details, and see in this commit what has been added and all of that. Now, typically, you won't be looking too much at commits, I think. I think you will be more looking at either the branches that are available or at the files in the repository on a given branch that you can filter here. By default, if you have a README file in your repository, Space will render that as the landing page here, because typically the README file has technical information on how to clone this repository, how to get started in your IDE the first time you load up the code and all that. So you can see that here. The other things you will see is, of course, that you have all of the folders that are in this in the source code here. You can look at the actual sources that are there as well. So let's look at this one. Yeah, maybe go in there, look at some of the sources, and then this one. So you can see all of those, and if you want, you can even edit them from in the browser. But let's cover editing at a later point. Let's just continue exploring what is available here. So first of all, what you can do here is you can also add questions again. You see this chat icon here appearing when I hover any line of code that is in here. So what we can do here is, for example, add a comment and mention our entire team and say, hey, software development, should we make this a static variable instead? Ask a question, I'm new to the company, or I have a question about the implementation of existing code in the repository. I can ask a question there and essentially look at code and have things really tied to that code, and so people can see what is going on there, get the documentation on questions that have been available about some piece of code. Again, interesting, if we switch to our other user, they will see that I now added a comment in android.kt. They will just get a snippet in their chats, and they can say, no, this is really intended to be a factory method, for example, and they can continue their work, look at other things, and all of that. Again, switching back to me, I can see this response and say, okay, got it, thanks, and for example, resolve this thing, and my question has been answered. I don't have to copy a link to this piece of code. I can do that if I want. I don't have to do it and copy it into Slack or Teams and then ask a question there, wait for people to show up. No, again, I can just start a chat here, mention someone, mention the entire team, and start chatting about a piece of code without having to go through. Cool. So to answer Dorka, I see your question there, so if you ask your question there in the chats, we will all see them and we can answer them. Right. So this is really looking at existing code, asking questions, collaborating about whatever is in there, and I find this really useful. We use this inside of JetBrains as well to ask questions about why something was implemented in a certain way, or how something was implemented, or what is the background about some pieces of code. So you can do that there. Now let's work on code. I mentioned that you can edit code from the browser and just start typing if you want. What you can also do is use any Git client and connect to the Space repository, clone that in Visual Studio Code, in IntelliJ, in JetBrains Writer, in whatever IDE you may be using. Another thing that you can do is, if you are using the JetBrains IDEs, that is that we have a plugin that is installed by default in IntelliJ, where you can log into Space. You'll see that you have to accept the login and go in there. And once you do that, you will see all of the repositories that you have access to. So for example, if I want to work on this Ktor samples project, I can find it here, or the Ktor project, I can find it here and clone from here. I'm going to select a smaller one here because the Ktor one is a really big one, and for demo purposes may take too long, but let's just clone this restaurant service here and bring it to our machine. Again, integration is key to Space, and by having that integration in the IDE, I can even start working with code from within the IDE here, and then start making changes and all of that. Now, when you make changes, typically lots of companies and lots of organizations will do that on different branches, on feature branches, on hotfix branches, etc., and then do a merge request or a pull request to get people in the company to review those changes and bring them back to the main branch to have a little bit of quality control in there. That's definitely something that is possible in space. And let's switch to a different project here where I have a nice example with that restaurant service. So in the restaurant service, I created a merge request already where I want to add continuous integration to the project. And you will see this is the entire timeline of whatever is going on. I added a couple of reviewers. My colleagues are in there, so I really would like them to review things. And whenever everything is ready, I can merge. Now you will see that this merge button is orange right now, which means something is not quite ready yet. And the reason for that is that I did not yet pass all of the required approvals. I mentioned Space is really self-organizing by default, and merging those changes to production may not be intended here. So by default, we show a warning and show that something is wrong. If you want to lock this down, if you really want to have that requirement of someone has to first of all review things, the build has to pass, things like that, you can also configure that if you want. Inside the code review, you can see all of the changes. You can add comments and start reviewing on all that. You can do that from within Space, from within the desktop application as well, or again from in IntelliJ. You can look at the code reviews there, look at the ones that are open, and I can also see it in the IDE, see the changes that are there, look at the files that have been changed, go in there, add comments, add remarks, add questions, etc. Right. Dorcat, thank you for clarifying your question. So can I direct all questions in code and in reviews and all of that to a specific person, or will everybody see my question? Really good question. Everyone will see the question you write there. In a code review or even in the repository, if you add one of those comments, you can say hello, for example. This one will not notify anyone, but anyone with access to this repository will be able to see this question. You can tag people. So for example, I can tag just one colleague. They will then get a notification. But again, everyone can see the question that is being asked. And like I did previously in the demo, you can ask entire software development for their opinion on something or a question on something. This will notify everyone, but again, also everyone in the company even that has access to this repository will be able to see it. Right, so back to our code review. So our code review, I mentioned I can merge it and bring it back to the main bench if you want. This repository is kind of free format. It will warn you, but it will not lock everything down explicitly. If you want to do that, you can go to your repository, go to settings, and then set, for example, protected branches where you can say, look, nobody can do a force push, for example. I need approval from at least, let's say, everyone in the company. I need at least 3 reviewers to approve something. I also need automation jobs to pass, etc., etc. So you can really configure how you want to work and how rigid the process of merging things to main should be. Right, I'm going to switch back to Ktor here, back to code reviews there. Well, back to the Ktor samples project. So imagine we made some changes, code review has passed and everyone was okay with it. The next thing you can do in a project is have continuous integration. So for this project, all the application in our Git repository built every single time someone commits a change. And we can see that all of the builds here finished successfully, which is great. And for every build, I can look at all of the steps that have been executed. I can look at the changes that were included. So you get full traceability of everything from code you write to the related code review to maybe related issues and all of that. Again, the integration that is there. I can run these again, and you can essentially set up your CI/CD in Space directly. All of that is there, and you can look at the steps. I'm not going to go too deep into this one. If you have any questions there, I will share with Petra afterwards a link to a webinar we did last week on this, going into more detail on space automation. What I do want to go into for software development teams is you have this flow of an issue, you start working on the issue, you start coding, then you do the reviewing, then you do CI/CD, and at some point you may also want to push out containers that you can then deploy to production somewhere in a Kubernetes cluster. Well, the good news is that Space has package support for Docker containers, for Maven artifacts, for NuGet packages, for NPM packages, all of that. So what you will see is that the applications from our repo are pushing their artifacts after CI/CD passes into a package repository here, and folks on the team can then use Maven or Gradle in this case to bring that application into their projects they are building. Again here, traceability. So you will see all of the files that are included. You will see all of the different versions that are available. But what you will also see is that this chat application artifact has been created by this specific build, and you can go back to the CI/CD process that did this. In there, again, I can see the steps that have been executed, any tests that have been executed, changes included, and from those changes, I can also go back to the code review that was there. From the code review, I can go back to the issue, etc. So really the entire chain for software developers, the entire flow of things that are going on there. Right, so that's really a high-level overview of everything in projects. There's much more, so if there's anything specific you want to see, again, hit the chat, ask a question, and we will go into that. I'm going to leave projects now. Yeah, maybe one more in projects. If you have a larger team and you have different responsibilities on the team, for example, someone is a tester, someone is a developer, someone is working on specific subsystems of the project, what you can do is under settings, you can also set responsibilities. So for example, you will see that in this project, the CI/CD pipeline stuff is handled by Lucille. Community contacts are handled by Hadi. Documentation is Matthias. Testing framework is Christiana and Lucille. So it's easy for me to find out who to talk to about, for example, testing. And again, here, having the integration with your entire team directory is very useful because I can see Christiana is there. What is her availability? She's off work apparently right now. So let's see if Lucille is available. Also off work. Anyway, I can still go to chat and start speaking with them about anything in the projects. And I'm really surprised that I made this really nice bridge going from projects to chats again. So in any team, in any organization, communication is something that is really important, and Space comes with chats for that. Chats can be channels with the software development team, for example, that has channels. Chats can be direct messages where you can talk with just one person directly. Chats can be threads, sub-conversations in a certain message, but chats can also be, like we already kind of saw, can be issues, can be code comments, can be automation status updates, for example. So everything will feed into chats, and if our application builds, for example, you will see that in the chats, and from the chat you get a notification and you can quickly go back to projects if you want. If you want to create a new channel or search for channels, you can do that here as well. And you can set up a new channel for your team, a private channel, a public channel that anyone can join as well, or create a conversation with one person, with multiple persons that is private. A really interesting one in Space is that you can also create personal feeds. And personal feeds are special channels, and by default, you already get the Spacebox channel for that. And the Spacebox channel is a channel that will give you notifications for events that happen in the organization. So by default, you will see whenever someone from your team is unavailable. You will see whenever a blog post is published. You will see whenever documents are being updated. You will see whenever issues are being updated and all of that. And you can also add your custom subscriptions. So if at some point you're interested, for example, in let's say new commits in a certain project, you can do that, pick the project, pick the repository, and you will get notifications whenever someone adds something. I know this is all possible in Teams, this is all possible in Slack as well, but in Space, again, thanks to the integration, it's really as simple as adding a subscription to a certain thing, and you will get that notification. You don't have to dive into webhooks or third-party integrations or anything like that, so everything stays in Space in this case. Right, back to our channels. We have a software development channel here, and I see that Heather asked, was the demo today? And Arjen wrote in a thread, yeah, I think so. Oh, I forgot to schedule a meeting for it. So let's say, oops, forgot. And let's add an emoji as well. Sweat smile seems recent. We'll do it now. And then again, from here, I can add this message to my to-do lists. So I have to schedule a meeting apparently, so I can add this to my to-do lists and continue work, go through the rest of my messages and so on. And once I did that, I can look at my to-do list again and see, okay, I have to add this meeting, jump back to that thread and work on that to-do if I want. Going to complete it for now. I mentioned meetings and calendars earlier, so let's do that now. Let's schedule that meeting and add it immediately. So I can do plus, create a new absence, blog post, channel, documents, all of those things. So let's create a new meeting in this case. Demo for customers seemed a good title. I can add a description. Demo space for customers. And I can add rooms if I want, if you want to have physical rooms, and I can add participants. By default, not the entire company is shown here in the list of participants, but I can still search for anyone who is there that I know of. And also, if you want to add this at example.org as an external participant, that is possible as well. Participants can also be the entire software development team. And what you will see is that again, by having absence information, by having other calendar information in Space, I can see some people are on sick leave in this case and ignore conflicts if I want, or find a better time to schedule something. So let's say maybe Saturday. Apparently Saturday everyone is available except at 12. But Saturday is of course not a good day to schedule things. So let's do this on Monday. And Monday, again, you will see in blue where my meeting can start. So let's go with 2 p.m. and go from there. Meetings can be recurring, meetings can have multiple people and so on. What you can also do is remove the team, just add myself, and set this meeting to be something that non-participants can join. This is a really interesting meeting, because it means that if I copy the link to this one and I post here, feel free to join, and the link to the meeting, I can see that I'm already attending, but my colleague will see in chat that they can also join the meeting. And now 2 people are attending. So if you have those optional meetings that people can join if they want, instead of asking, hey, do you want to join, going in, adding them, sending them an update and all of that, again, it becomes self-service. You just post a meeting link and people can join directly if they want to. All right. While we are in chats, let's maybe cover one of the questions that just came in. Can I create a personal feed, or is it already there and do I just have to adjust it? Yes and yes. That's a simple answer. So this Spacebox feed is already there by default, and it has all of these default subscriptions that are there. What you can do, as I showed, is customize these things, subscribe to other things, or remove certain subscriptions. And imagine if you are a manager and you have your team and you want to make sure that you get their vacation information in a more focused channel. You can create a second of those personal feeds and say team absences, for example, as a name. Give it an airplane because that's what you do on vacation. Create that channel and then configure the subscriptions and say, look, this one is really absences of people who report to me as a manager, for example. And then save that, and now I will get all of those notifications in a dedicated channel, and also still in the Spacebox, but also in this dedicated one. Does that answer the question? I hope it does. If not, we can leave it. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Cool. What else do we have? I think I showed calendar a little bit from scheduling a meeting, but also you can go to your own calendar and see things for this week, for just today, for the entire month, all of that. You can add meetings from there. You can add absences and all of that as well. A question that we very often get here is, does this integrate with our existing Office 365 or Google apps? Not yet. We have it in dogfooding in JetBrains, so we use it internally, integrated with Google. Customers cannot yet use it, but it is coming at some point in the future. Right. What else do we have? So we have projects, we have chats, we have the team directory. Let's now maybe look at blog posts. At the start, I mentioned that on my personal homepage here, I can look at blog posts, and you can see that, for example, a new QA team is being formed, was the latest news. This is a blog post targeted to people in the organization and apparently targeted to just a software development team. So not everyone will see this one. Well, they can see it, but they will not get notified about it. But this was important for the software development team, so someone wrote a blog post about that, announcing that this fact is happening. Blog posts, again, can be something that you can add to your to-do list again, and I can complete it, for example. You can subscribe to it, and by subscribing to a certain blog post, that means that if someone adds a comment on that blog post, you will get a notification about it. So I can say, this is great, for example. Or let's switch to my colleague here. Also go to that blog post and let my colleague say, this is great. And on my end, I'm going to be in a different place in space. This is great. Comment is being added to a blog post. And on my end, I will see that a chat message appears from this blog post where I can look at, this is great. And I can say, yeah, this is very great, with reactions. And my colleague will again see that in the blog post. So again, having things integrated with chats, those blog posts and comments will be there as well. Another integration in blog posts, and let me switch to this blog post, or maybe let's just create a new blog post. Another thing that you can do with a blog post, let's call this one tests. Another thing you can do is add an event to a blog post. So in JetBrains, for example, every couple of months we have an all hands where everyone in the company can join a meeting with the entire company if you want. You can announce that as a blog post, and you can also add an event, and again, people will be able to just click, okay, I will attend, and it will be added to their calendar if you want to do that. Right, I see we have 10 minutes left. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And if not, I will just keep on going to give you some of the background of some other things that are in space. Because so far, we've looked at how you would use space as an end user in your organization. But of course, if you adopt space, you also have the administrator who has to be able to do certain things. So let's switch into the administration section and also go through that one a little bit. First of all, you can set organization details like a logo, a description, default time zone, etc., etc. This is very useful to at least give you some icons and some recognizability with people and so on. But probably the thing that you will be doing most as an administrator is adding member profiles, inviting people into the space organization with a name, username, birthday if you want, email addresses, etc. Work on locations maybe. If you have multiple locations, you can add conference rooms and all of that information as well. And maybe create new teams, remove teams, merge teams, and all of that. Another thing you will be doing as an administrator is probably setting permissions. So permissions have predefined roles where you have managers, for example, that can do certain things in the organization. You have project admins that can do certain things. So you can essentially configure what a specific person can do. These roles are really roles. They are not your team, because teams is really organizational. Roles is what can that team or that person in the company do in space. If you use space, I mentioned that Office 365 and Google Apps integration with the calendar is coming. You can already make use of an authentication module and, for example, do single sign-on with your Active Directory or your Azure Active Directory, so that people who already have a login in one of those systems can just use the same login to enter space. So by default, space has its own username and password, But if you already have something in place, you can integrate that and people can just join by logging through their Azure Active Directory, for example. Some other stuff that is here is that you can add custom fields to certain properties. So Space has lots of things out of the box, but for your organization, maybe you want to add something to member profiles where you say, does this person have a corporate laptop? Well, you can add a custom field to member profiles or to Teams, for example, and say, okay, look, a corporate laptop is something that I want to know. It's a simple yes or no. The default is checked or unchecked. And is it public, confidential, or restricted? This may be useful, for example, if you have something that you want to know about people in the organization for HR purposes, for example, but you can also set it to confidential, so only the person themselves can see the field and people with certain privileges in the company. So you can customize those things as well. And maybe one more in terms of customization. There is this Extensibility Extensions entry here as well. Space, well, a lot of things are integrated out of the box. We cannot provide everything for you. So what you can also do is build your own applications. There's an app store under development, but it's not yet there. But what you can do is build your own integrations that, for example, use the API to do anything in Space, from adding a message to chat to automatically adding absences if something happens in a different system, to writing blog posts whenever something happens and things like that. In this example, I already have a couple of applications that are configured. So Meticulous is a demo that I'm personally building. So what I did was integrate that with my Space application, and what you will see is that I get insights into my meeting information, for example. So like you see, you can integrate with everything that is in Space, get data, push data, whatever you want to do there. And also, because the API is there, you can also make use of single sign-on and have this just work if you hit the URL and you are already logged into Space. So with that, I think we have about 5 minutes left, or a good 5 minutes. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and we can look at pretty much anything you want in Space, or try to answer anything you want. Really good question from Laszlo. Is this project cloud-based only, or is an on-premises version also an option? Right now, it is cloud-based only. And I say right now because we have a private beta running with an on-premises version with some of our customers. So it is coming, but it's not there at this point in time, but it is coming. How often do you make backups? Really good question. We essentially make continuous backups. So we make use of AWS in the background for our cloud-hosted version of Space. And we're making use of all the features in AWS to have point-in-time database restores, etc., etc. So in case there is anything you want to restore, yeah, contact support, and they can also look at it and see whatever is in there. Good questions, by the way, so keep them coming. And if you don't like typing and you just want to enable your microphone and ask it directly, that's also perfectly fine. All right, I'm going to ask you a question then, and feel free to say yes or no in the chat. Who of you is intrigued and wants to give Space a try, at least? And while I wait for people to answer, I will quickly give you the link to where you can find more information about Space, and I'm sure TransEurope can also help you with that. But if you look at the Space homepage at jetbrains.space or jetbrains.com/space, you will find a lot of the things that I've been showing, so you can get more information there if you want. And if you want to check out Space, you can always sign up for free. it's a little bit limited, of course, but there is a plan where you can try out many of the features that are there and just give it a try, see what is there, experiment with things that are in there as well. Pricing information is up there as well, which was honestly a question that I sort of expected. It's up there as well, but I'm also really sure that TransEurope can help you with that as well. So with that, if no further questions come in, I'm going to put up this slide and again give you the summary of what Space is. It's really the all-in-one solution for software development teams, and everything that you do there is available: teams, stats, projects, and all of that. Really good question just popped in. Who owns the contents that I upload to Space? Well, you own the contents that you upload to Space. So if you want to export things, if you want to pull things out, if you want to cancel everything there, all of the content that is there is of course owned by you.
Hi, thank you, Maarten, for the exciting webinar.
You're welcome.
And it was really good. And thank you, everyone, for the interest and attention. And in case of any questions or requests, please contact us or Maarten. Thank you again, Maarten, and have a great day to you, your team, and everyone who joined us today.
Thank you very much, and thanks for attending today.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a nice day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.